name is Pamela Grafassi, and I'm the third grade teacher at St. Peter and Paul School in Williamsville. Candy Zuccaro, the fourth grade teacher at the same school, and I developed a class called Kitchen Chem. We are very, very fortunate because we were one of the schools that was the pilot school for the entire stream program. So this was quite an honor to be able to take part in this and to develop a class and conduct that class. The very first time that we did it, we had a class of about 10 students, both boys and girls, in the second and third grade level of teaching. Now, what happened is we spoke with the children, found out their backgrounds before we did anything. You know, some of the kids enjoyed being in the kitchen with mom and dad every evening and helping them cook and prepare the meals. Some of the kids would maybe go see grandma on a Saturday afternoon, help grandma cook, and then some of the students had really never ventured into the kitchen at all. So we took that into consideration, as I said, along with the grade level and the number of students. So I can honestly tell you that we probably have not conducted the same class 2 years in a row, because all of that seems to change in the mix along the way. But that's what adds, I think, to the flexibility of the class, and again, their input has a lot to do with it. But let me walk through session 1 with you first, which is basically what happens in the kitchen. So because we have our stream classes right after school, which is a little bit before 2, and they last approximately an hour, usually we go a little bit over. What happens is we invite the students into, again, in our case, the faculty kitchen, which is kind of interesting for them to begin with because most of them didn't even know this existed. So they put their book bags outside the room, they would enter the room, we would have them come over to the sink, they would wash their hands, and then they would sit down. Again, being kids, the end of the school day, they're starving. So Candy Zuccaro and I would always have, you know, pretzels, or we'd have some fresh fruit, or we'd have something to tide them over while we're preparing for the session. The thing that we would do every single class is that we would emphasize safety. Again, because you do have the stove, you've got the oven, you've got knives, we go over all of the basics with them. Needless to say, they never use the oven, they never cook anything on the stovetop other than helping us to stir. And in terms of the knives, they would only use the butter knives, or they would use the plastic knives, the ones that you would take on a picnic. And there again, it gave us the opportunity to talk about recycling with them. So you're going to find as you're going along, it is so much more than just science and cooking. And again, that's where the whole concept of stream stems from. So it's perfect. What we also do is make them aware that that structure is basically what we're going to do. No matter what foods we're dealing with, no matter what we're preparing, what we're going to do is follow basically the same regimen. And we're also going to emphasize each and every time that we're looking at cooking through the eyes of scientists. At that point too, we might mention to them all of the careers that are evolving based on food and cooking and nutrition. In terms of getting our kitchen in order, I'm not going to go through the tote with you. The kitchen tote, basically it's all written down in your manual, what we have in ours, but the kitchen tote basically is very similar to what you probably have in your kitchen and in your pantry right now. So as I said, I'm not going to take the time to show you that. What I will share with you though are some of the books that we had purchased. There are numerous books, there are numerous videos. We found these to be very helpful, so I am going to share those with you. One of them is called Cooking Class. One of them is put out by National Geographic Kids, and as you can see, it's entitled Cookbook. And we have another one from National Geographic Kids, which is Edible Science Experiments You Can Eat. As I said, there are numerous books for you to choose from. Those are just some of our favorites. Again, anything that I'm showing you is duplicated within the book that you'll be getting. The only other thing I want to emphasize with that is along the way we subscribe to the science spin. So I would say at least once or twice, if not 3 times a year, they will have a science spin that depicts something regarding food. And this comes under the category of physical science. It talks about, well, it's entitled Inside Valentine's Candy, Find Out How Food Scientists Create Some of Your Favorite Treats. So we make sure that we include that in our teaching. What you can do is what Candy and I would do the night before our class. We would go to one of the grocery stores, we would get the perishable items that we need, so we'd be prepared for the day. The other thing that we would do too is send home a wish list, because especially the time of year, in September when the kids are coming back, a lot of them have been growing fruits and vegetables in their garden. So if we send home a wish list and we let mom and dad know this is what we intend to do next class, if you'd like to, send any of these items with your child, feel free. It's a wonderful addition to the class, in addition to the fact that the kids usually come in and they've got this marvelous background story that accompanies that with them. We've had children from different cultures that will come in and they'll bring in a vegetable that we have not normally used in our cooking, and they'll explain and give us the whole story about it, and it just adds to the uniqueness of the class. So we love when that happens. When we're talking about food and what we're going to prepare, we talk about the nutritional value of that. Now, if you're fortunate enough, as we were one year, we had a student whose dad was a professional chef in one of the area restaurants. So he actually came in, he talked about nutrition with us, he actually helped us all prepare a meal. And this little girl obviously loved sharing her dad with us, and we all learned so much from him. You can also ask someone in your school cafeteria to come in and talk about nutrition. That's always enormously helpful. There is something called My Plate, all right? It's entitled ChooseMyPlate.gov, that's the site. This program is enormously helpful. We've spoken with the science teachers, the health teachers, again, the whole integration of our stream programs, and they have actually supplemented some of the things that we're doing in our class. So that is a big help as well. Kitchen vocabulary. While we've been teaching, and again, this works for those children that are well versed in the kitchen and those that are just entering the kitchen pretty much for the first time, we will go over words with them, and words like, having them decipher what's the difference between dicing and mincing and chopping, and we would make a point of using those words throughout the entire class session. So we're expanding on their vocabulary as well with that. Another component that we talk about quite a bit is math, as you can imagine, measuring up. So many times in my math class, I'd be going over something and I'd have someone say, okay, so why do we need to learn this? How are we going to use it? This is the perfect vehicle, because they can see. If they don't know the difference between 1/4 of a cup and 1/2 of a cup, it's going to radically influence the result of their cooking experience. Fractions, all of those basic skills. And it's amazing, and through your own classes, when you can physically show them something, it really is embedded in their thoughts and in their the realization of where this can lead them. We will also, there is a little game in your book that has some math skills, so that the kids can think about, what's the difference? How many quarts are there in a gallon? How many pints? Again, because we've got our totes and we've got all of those measuring cups in them, they can see exactly what all of this means. The cleanup component, there is never any escape from that, as you well know. But honestly, the kids, it's all part of the lesson They know at the end of the, food adventure that we're having that everybody's going to clean up. They really don't mind at all. And while they're cleaning up, after they've cleaned up rather, that's usually the time that we will take out whatever we've created. They will have a chance to sample it. We'll talk about it. A lot of times we'll ask them, what would you have done differently? What would you do if you were doing this at home with your family? How would you change it? So the feedback that we get and the discussion points are critical. If it is something that you are cooking or baking in class, and again, because we are limited to an hour, we have got to modify that a little bit. So if there is something that they have not had an opportunity to eat in class, what we do is we finish preparing it after they've left, and the next day when they go to lunch, we will take a portion of it for them to eat. And it really, you wouldn't believe how much attention that gets in the lunchroom and how much pride they take in the fact that they're eating something that they just created for themselves. There are times, and again, you're going to see this in your book, there are times that, for example, Candy and I would have to make something the night before. So I'm thinking about our pretzel recipe. It's a wonderful recipe because it's one of the few where you don't have to boil the pretzel before you bake it. You just bake it. But needless to say, because you're using yeast, what we had to do is make the recipe the night before so it had time to rise. So the way that we structured that class is when the kids entered, we went through all the steps, we told them what happened, we gave them some of the dough, they made their pretzel with whatever decoration, whatever design they wanted, we baked it. While that was in the oven, we actually started the recipe from scratch so they could make their own. And then after they left, we let it rise. The next day, they had a chance to sample what they had actually made. So again, just be prepared to modify things, but it all works. It all works. Good planning is the key, as with most things in life. Interdisciplinary lessons, as you know, that is the main emphasis of our STREAM program. The T, as you know, stands for technology. What we do in our class to help them get an understanding of that concept and how it works with our class, we might video the kids so they can actually look back and see what they've done. What we can do is share a video with them. Perhaps there's something that we don't have time to accomplish in class or something that's a little bit more complicated. What we can do is put on a quick video for them while something's baking and cooking. By the way, it's perfect. It's a little bit of a brain break for them. The S, of course, stands for science. So much of what happens, you don't sometimes, especially with cooking, have a chance to step back and think about the whys. So, for example, why does yeast help that dough to rise? What science is going on that you can buy bananas one day and 2 days later they're starting to brown? So that gives us an opportunity to include science into our class. Engineering. The students, again, I'll go back to the pretzels. If they're putting the pretzels in the oven, and based on the number of kids in the room that they have in that oven, they may have to change the design of how they're actually putting them in to bake so that everything can bake properly and it's not touching and it's got room to expand and it's cooking. And that again would be the engineering component of it. Art. We want everything to be visually pleasing. There really is that strong eye to taste connection. I mean, who doesn't like going to a restaurant and seeing this marvelous display of food in front of you? It just makes it more appealing and enticing and enjoyable. So we do a little bit of that. The math we've already talked about. Math is an essential part of cooking. And what we have actually done is we have changed the quantities. Say, of sugar or salt or flour or milk into a recipe. And we've had, again, if you had 10 students, you might have 5 students try a recipe using a quarter of a pound of flour, and I'm sorry, a quarter of a cup of flour, and have the additional 5 students try making it with a half of a cup of flour, and try both recipes and see which one is more appealing, so they can visually see what we're doing, but they can also taste the difference in the items. So you're really, again, giving math and the reason we go through multiplying, dividing, and working with fractions a real part of their lives. And last but not least, religion. Every time we have a class, we just pray that our creations will work out. Stone soup. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this book. I really can't even tell you the backstory. I don't know how it came about that we started to use this, and we did incorporate it in our book for you as well. But there is a book. It was published in 1720, and again, the title is Stone Soup, and it featured 2 Jesuit priests, and it was set in Normandy. In the year 1947, Marcia Brown, and I will show you, Marcia Brown, wrote this book. She altered it a little bit, and her main characters were 3 soldiers who were returning from war. They were, it takes place somewhere in Europe. The theme was the same. The 3 books I'm going to show you, the theme is always the same, just, small detail changes. It did get a Caldecott Honor Award. So some of your students may be familiar with it. I don't know how many. The latest updated version of that actually features monks, and it takes place someplace in Asia. The thing about this story is the theme is the same. It talks about it talks about villagers, and they discover how much they actually have to give. They thought they had very little, and they were surprised at how much actually they could change to make their worlds a little bit better. And they also found that by giving, they received much more than they would ever have anticipated. So quite honestly, it shows a lot of the values that we are trying to espouse with our students and teach our students in the Catholic school environment. So what we do with that is, again, it's one of the first cooking lessons that we have. We invite the students to go home, maybe go grocery shopping with mom or dad or grandma, maybe go to their own garden, but bring back a vegetable, any kind of vegetable that they would like, because we'll be using it at the upcoming class. What Candy and I would always do is we would always bring in a few extra supplies just to make sure we had everything that we needed. And we would have the kids talk about why they brought this vegetable, what the source of this vegetable is, because again, so many come from the gardens. It gives them a chance to reacquaint themselves with some of their classmates, tell a little bit more about them, but also we can include the nutritional value of those items that they brought. The whole idea about introducing literature into cooking is just a whole other component of that. What we've always done, just so you know, we've always included a formal recipe so you can see exactly what you need if you so choose to use it, and you don't have to worry, there are no stones. Don't have to worry about any stones. And we hope that you enjoy that as much as we always do. We're now going to take a look at sections 4 through 9 in your booklet. It has to do with teacher objectives and student recipes. What we've always done is giving you some background information, especially about some of the recipes. Maybe it's a vegetable that is not commonly used. We also go into a little bit of the science background in terms of why the kids are doing this. So one of the objectives when the kids first walk in, is to talk about the lesson itself. You know, gives them a little bit of an overview. What are we really trying to accomplish here, in addition to making something delicious to eat? Again, going back to the pretzels, why are we using yeast? It gives them something to think about. Again, through those science eyes as they're cooking. We go through the kitchen utensils, we open the tote, we've got double items for everything so that we can divide our class so that they're both working. It's almost impossible to do one recipe and have 10 students participate in preparing it, so we've always divided it into basically 2 groups if we're working with 10 students. We would talk about the different utensils. We talk about, you know, things that maybe are special items. You know, there are some cute little things, like if you're working with cherries, there's this cute little tool that's an actual cherry depitter, which is kind of fun. They get a kick out of little things like that. So we start laying out the utensils, putting the kids in groups, dividing all the materials so they're completely ready to begin. Then, in terms of the actual activity, we again go through the steps that they're going to need to follow. We talk about the ingredients, you know, why you might be using sea salt versus ionized salt, just little things like that. The other thing that we love doing is if we're using a recipe, say bruschetta, and you're going to be using tomatoes, what we might end up doing is having some sun-dried tomatoes, having some grape tomatoes, having some green tomatoes, cut them into little pieces, having the kids try them, you know, discuss with us the differences in taste. Then what we might do is actually saute them and now have the children you know, look at how they're different. And again, because of the chemical and physical changes, they're going to tell you things. They're going to tell you perhaps that the texture has changed or the color has changed, or maybe a vegetable that had been very hard is now very soft. Just little observations that they're going to make, not only because it gives them the experience to try different things, but it also, I think, impacts the whole reason behind the learning. And they'll look at things just a little bit more closely, hopefully. We also, when we're talking about the ingredients, talk about the basic things, you know, that they really need to wash it. They need to, again, even they're using butter knives, be really careful with the use of those. And then following the recipe. Really important that they're following the steps. In fact, again, what we've included in your booklet is a really cute sheet, and it's entitled Can You Follow Directions? You're probably familiar with it. If not, I think you'll enjoy doing it. It's got, for example, 12 steps. The very first step says, read the first question and you don't have to go any farther. And then some of the kids will just, you know, kind of get through that really quickly and then keep going down until they get all the way to the 12th step and realize, oh my gosh, they didn't have to do any of it. It really is, it's cute. So what we will do is after we've prepared our food, we will have a wrap-up session. And we'll talk about what they learned. You know, was there anything that they tried this time that they had never had before? Is there anything that they would change about this recipe? Do they think that they would try this recipe with their families? What we've always done with that also is we've given them a copy of the recipe. So they can take that recipe, they can try it at home. I was surprised to find how many students were doing that, and because we'd hear it from the parents, you know, either that they tried something that they hadn't tried before, or how willing the kids were to be in the kitchen with them cooking. We would discuss what they learned, you know, what was new to them. So it really, honestly, is one of my favorite parts of the session, And we do go around, so everybody has a chance to share what they'd like to. If there is someone, and you know this from your own classes, if you find someone that's a little bit shy and they're not ready, that's okay. That's okay. They're contributing to the class as best they can, and as long as they've joined us and they're enjoying it and they're taking part, that's awesome. That's all that's the best part of it. I've mentioned some recipes that we've shared as a class. I just want to show you in the very first book, it's entitled Kitchen Chem, Edible Science. This is where you're going to find everything that I'm talking about. I just wanted to share some of the kinds of recipes that we've included for you. We've included a basic thing like fruit salad. We've showed you the recipe for soft pretzels. Again, because you're not boiling them, it reduces that one whole segment of the recipe. Chicken stir fry gave us an opportunity again to show them different kinds of vegetables. We would, for example, take some of the chicken patties and we'd pound them down. Again, just because it's a school environment and because it's raw chicken, what we would do is actually put it within a baggie or a little plastic bag, have them use a mallet to flatten it. It helped with cleanup, but again, it gave us an opportunity to talk about, the fact that it is raw meat and you shouldn't have that near the vegetables because it can contaminate. So they're learning, and again, that's science. That's the bacteria. We have a recipe for pancakes, creamy tomato soup. Again, how lovely if those tomatoes would be from someone's garden. Baked apples, perfect for October, November. A lot of them you'll find. We'll share a story with you about how they've gone apple picking. Carrot cupcakes, carrot mini muffins. We have found, again, it gives us an opportunity to be able to share with them that, you've got a vegetable in here and you probably weren't even aware that it was in there. You can't even taste it, but it's adding those extra nutrients. We also have found in the course of teaching this that, again, the mini muffins were ideal just because it saves time. Now that there are more muffins, we try to send something home with them also so mom and dad can taste it. So again, it lowers the baking time. They have a chance to eat it, then they have a chance to group some together and take home. We would include things like dips. Anything that you can come up with, quite honestly, that you think is a healthy alternative, you think you can show some scientific value to it, and also, again, that you think it's going to be conducive to the teaching environment that we're working in. There's one more thing I would like to add to the actual cooking component of the class, and that is that there are times that something is cooking and the kids have accomplished everything that you would like them to. What we have actually done is we have a game. It's a food Jeopardy game. We've included it into the booklet for you. As I said, we've watched a video. We might play back a video of them cooking so they can comment on it. Anything that you feel is going to be a wonderful brain break, but again, something that's going to enrich your class. That might be the time that you take out one of the ingredients that you've used and you talk about food labeling. You might even have them bring a food label the next time to class. As you've noticed so many times, things that you think will take a moment or two all of a sudden add on to a whole new dimension that you hadn't even thought about. So that time is really, really valuable. Not only that, but they have had a full structured day at school, and it gives them that opportunity to just bond and discuss and eat all the things that we love to do. Our Kitchen Chem class seemed to be so successful that we were asked a few years after that if we wouldn't mind adding an additional class. So as you can see, It was entitled Kitchen Chem 2, Back at It. And I love this phrase because it seems to highlight the whole thing. A teacher's guide to combining some components of STREAM to every child's inquisitive nature as we explore science fun and create mini Einsteins. Now these recipes are a little bit more elaborate. They take a little bit more time. So for example, we would work with dehydrating strawberries, creating sun pickles. We would do a brown bag energy test. We would talk about which foods contain sugar. And again, everything is written down. It would show you the foods and the items that we had used, so you can duplicate it the way we did it if you'd like. If not, build on it and create your own, and use this as a backdrop if you'd like. We made ice cream in a bag. We talked about growing germs and decaying food. And again, as we were talking about physical and chemical change, we also did a little experiment on why apples turn brown. So that is a whole nother segment. Then we do some fun things, like lightning in your mouth, or we do spore prints. Again, the whole integration of all of that other subject matter brought into what we're doing with the kids in kitchen camp. The final segment of our book we were calling Supplements and Documents. And this may just take you back, in my case, to my college days, and we talked about some of the things that we have learned. We've supplied this information for you as well. So for example, we talked about the multiple intelligences, the fact that you have got, some children who learn by doing. Some kids, if they're listening really closely to you, that helps. Some kids that prefer to work in an intrapersonal situation where they're basically working independently. Then we've got the interpersonal relationship and grouping, where those kids really almost count on other people to help them and assist them along the way. This is just a reminder and a quick review, if you so choose to use it. The other thing that we've included is Bloom's taxonomy. All right, here again, it talks about some of the things that we want to bring out with our students. The creating, the evaluating, the analyzing. And again, our classes last anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. So it gives you ample time to be able to include a lot of this in your lessons, and you're finding it's not taking any extra time. And the kids, as you know, 99% of the time love to share with you. So it brings a lot of those things to the forefront. The My Plate, as we talked about earlier, My Plate, if you go if you Google this site, not only will it give you background information according to your grade level, but it's got all of these activities and all of these games. We have spoken with additional science teachers, and we've shared with them and health teachers what we've been doing. So if in fact they would like to include some of this, they're more than welcome to, because again, 6 to 8 weeks seems like a lot of time, but it's not, as you know from personal experience, I'm sure. The thing about My Plate too is it does take the place of the former food pyramid. It teaches the basics of nutrition, which we, talk about each and every class period. And again, the thing that I love about it most is because it teaches them in so many different ways. There were several times we would choose some of the games or activities while something's cooking. That would be included in one of our brain break sessions. As I had alluded to before with the stone soup, one of our favorite parts was teaching about science through children's literature. One of the books that we found, and again, I love the fact that this is another Caldecott Honor book. It's Strega-Nona's Magic Lessons. It's a cute story. It also features a priest, interestingly enough, It gave us an opportunity to talk about physical and chemical changes. It gave us an opportunity, it does take place in Italy, so it gave us an opportunity to, grab the map and find out where this particular region is located. Part of the book, it talks about a wedding cake. What a wonderful opportunity to be able to have them grab their art boxes and create and design their own. An alchemist. Okay, what does that actually mean? And is there a fairy tale that they can think of where someone tried to turn something into gold? A whole new concept for some of them. And here again, what a marvelous opportunity to speak with the music teacher and ask if she could perhaps play some Italian orchestral music. What Candy and I had done is we had just done that as background music while we were doing this, and then we can pull a recipe that coincides with the story. One of the last things I wanted to share with you is because allergies, they're just commonplace in our schools, and it's really, really critical that we know exactly what their background medical histories are. So the very, very first day when we were actually, having students register for the class, once we had their name, they knew we were participating, we would ask to have an allergy sheet filled out, if there's any medical information that we would need, so that we could start the day and we knew that everybody, was in a good place. Not liking a food, as you know, is far different from being allergic to the food. I have shared numerous resources with you. They're all included in the book, along with contact information. I'm hoping that if I shared one thing with you that has given you, maybe a new direction to think along, or something that's going to entice you to teach this class, then it's been time well spent. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this.